For over 1,000 years, its walls had stood unbroken. Empires had tried, armies had failed, siege after siege had shattered against its stone. Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine world, the bridge between Europe and Asia, the last remnant of the Roman Empire. It was said that as long as Constantinople stood, Christendom was safe. It was said that no army could breach its massive Theodosian walls. But beyond the horizon, a new power was rising, a power born not from ancient Rome, but from the rugged hills of Anatolia. A power that would bring cannons large enough to shake the earth, a power led by a young sultan who believed destiny was on his side. This is the story of how a small frontier tribe became a world empire. This is the rise of the Ottomans. Chapter 1. The rise of the Ottomans, long before the cannons roared against Constantinople. There was only a small principality on the edge of chaos. At the end of the 13th century, Anatolia was fragmented. The once mighty Seljuk Sultanate had weakened after Mongol invasions. Small Turkish warrior states, known as beyliks, competed for land and influence. Among them was a minor leader named Osman. Osman I ruled a modest territory near the Byzantine frontier around 1299. He was not yet a conqueror of cities, he was a frontier warlord. But he possessed something powerful: opportunity. The Byzantine Empire, once vast and dominant, was shrinking. Its territories in Anatolia were vulnerable, its authority weakened by internal conflict and economic decline. Osman and his followers, Ghazis, warriors motivated by faith and expansion, began launching raids into Byzantine lands. Small victories, gradual expansion, strategic marriages and alliances. Osman did not try to conquer everything at once. He expanded methodically, village by village, fortress by fortress. The Ottomans offered something attractive to frontier warriors: land, spoils, and purpose. More fighters joined. Momentum grew. After Osman's death, leadership passed to his son, Orhan. Orhan proved just as capable. In 1326, the Ottomans captured Bursa, their first major city. Bursa became their capital. For the first time, the Ottomans were no longer just raiders, they were rulers. They developed administrative systems. They minted coins. They established religious institutions. They began transitioning from tribal warriors to structured state. But the real transformation came when the Ottomans crossed into Europe. In 1354, an earthquake damaged the Byzantine fortress of Gallipoli. Ottoman forces quickly seized it. For the first time, the Ottomans had a permanent foothold in Europe. Expansion accelerated. They advanced into the Balkans, Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece. Battle after battle solidified their dominance. One of the most decisive moments came in 1389 at the Battle of Kosovo. Though the battle was brutal and costly, it marked the beginning of long-term Ottoman control over much of the Balkans. Christian kingdoms trembled. The Ottomans were no longer a frontier state. They were a rising empire. And they were organized. The Ottomans built a disciplined military system. One of their most powerful innovations was the creation of the Janissaries. These were elite infantry soldiers, originally recruited through the Devshirme system, where Christian boys from conquered territories were taken, converted to Islam, and trained as professional soldiers. To modern audiences, the system appears harsh, but the result was formidable. The Janissaries were loyal only to the Sultan. Highly trained, disciplined. Unlike feudal European armies reliant on temporary levies, the Ottomans built a standing military force. That difference would change warfare. Under Sultan Murad I and later Bayezid I, the Ottomans expanded rapidly across southeastern Europe. By the early 15th century, they had surrounded Constantinople. The once mighty Byzantine capital was reduced to little more than the city itself and scattered territories. Yet Constantinople still stood. Its walls remained legendary, its symbolic power immense. The Ottomans attempted to capture it multiple times, but destiny was not yet aligned. In 1402, disaster struck. The Ottomans were defeated by Tamerlane, at the Battle of Ankara. Sultan Bayezid was captured. The empire fractured into civil war among his sons. For over a decade, chaos reigned. It could have ended there. The empire could have dissolved like so many others, but it did not. Mehmed I eventually restored unity. Stability returned. The Ottomans rebuilt, stronger, more determined. And then, in 1444, a young prince briefly became sultan. He would later return to the throne with an obsession, an ambition, a singular goal: His name was Mehmed II, and he believed he was destined to conquer Constantinople, the city that had resisted for centuries, the city that symbolized Rome, the city that divided continents. The rise of the Ottomans had been relentless, but their greatest test still stood before them. In the next chapter, we will witness the siege of 1453, the cannons, the final assault, and the fall of Constantinople. The empire had grown from a frontier tribe. Now it would challenge history itself. Chapter 2, the fall of Constantinople, 1453. By the mid-15th century, Constantinople was no longer the heart of a vast empire. It was an island of fading glory. Once the capital of the Roman world, once the center of Byzantine power, now surrounded by Ottoman lands on all sides, yet its walls still stood. The Theodosian walls, 3 layers of stone fortifications stretching for miles, had resisted Arabs, Bulgarians, Rus, and countless sieges for over 1,000 years. To conquer Constantinople was to accomplish what no one else had achieved, and Mehmed II intended to do exactly that. He was only 21 years old when he took the throne again in 1451. Young, intelligent, fluent in multiple languages, obsessed with history. He studied past failed sieges, he studied Roman tactics, he studied engineering, and he prepared. First, he secured his position internally. Then, he began isolating Constantinople. He constructed a massive fortress on the European side of the Bosporus, Rumeli Hizara, directly opposite an earlier Ottoman fort. Together, they controlled maritime traffic. No aid would reach the city by sea without Ottoman permission. Constantinople was being strangled, but Mehmed knew walls alone would not fall to swords. He needed something revolutionary. He found it in the form of artillery. A Hungarian engineer named Orban approached him with a proposal: build a cannon unlike any the world had seen. Massive, colossal, capable of firing stone balls weighing hundreds of kilograms. The cannon was constructed. Transporting it required dozens of oxen and hundreds of men. When it fired, the earth shook. In April 1453, the siege began. The Ottoman army numbered perhaps 80,000 to 100,000 men. Inside the city, Emperor Constantine X commanded around 7,000 defenders, including a small but determined force of Genoese soldiers led by Giovanni Giustiniani. The odds were overwhelming, yet morale inside the city remained high. The walls had never fallen. The cannons roared. Day after day, Ottoman artillery battered the fortifications. Stone splintered. Dust filled the air. But each night, Byzantine defenders repaired the damage. The city refused to collapse. Mehmed adapted. He deployed infantry assaults, waves of soldiers attacking breaches. He brought siege towers. He attempted to break the massive chain blocking the Golden Horn, the harbor protecting the northern side of the city. When the Ottoman fleet failed to break through directly, Mehmed did something astonishing. He ordered ships transported over land. Greased logs were laid across hills. Ottoman ships were dragged behind the Galata district and lowered into the Golden Horn. Suddenly, the Byzantines faced attacks from a direction they had thought secure. Shock rippled through the city. The siege tightened. Food supplies dwindled. Exhaustion set in. The cannons continued. By late May, a significant breach had opened in the walls near the gate of St. Romanus. Mehmed prepared for a final assault. On the night of May 28, 1453, prayers echoed across both camps. Inside the city, citizens gathered in Hagia Sophia for one last service. Greek and Latin Christians, long divided by theology, prayed together. Outside, Ottoman soldiers prepared for dawn. Before sunrise on May 29th, the final attack began. First came irregular troops, meant to exhaust defenders. Then Anatolian forces, then the elite Janissaries. Wave after wave, arrows darkened the sky. Cannons thundered. Hand-to-hand combat erupted along the breach. Giustiniani was severely wounded and carried away. His departure weakened morale. At some point during the chaos, a small gate, the Kirkaporta, may have been left unsecured. Ottoman forces surged through. Janissaries planted their banners on the walls. The city had fallen. Emperor Constantine XIII reportedly threw off his imperial insignia and charged into battle. He was never seen again. After more than a millennium, the Byzantine Empire ended. Mehmed II entered the city not as a destroyer of ruins, but as a conqueror of history. He rode to Hagia Sophia. The great cathedral was converted into a mosque. Constantinople would no longer be the capital of Rome. It would become Istanbul, the heart of the Ottoman Empire. The fall of Constantinople sent shockwaves across Europe. Trade routes shifted. Scholars fled west, bringing classical manuscripts that helped ignite the Renaissance. The Middle Ages were closing. A new era was beginning. The Ottomans had done what no army had accomplished before. They had shattered the walls that could not fall, and Mehmed II would forever be known as Mehmed the Conqueror. But conquest was only the beginning. In the next chapter, we will explore the golden age of the Ottoman Empire, the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent, expansion into Europe and the Middle East, and the slow transformation from unstoppable force to declining power. The city had fallen. The empire was just beginning. Chapter 3. Glory, power, and decline. With Constantinople conquered, Mehmed II did not simply celebrate. He rebuilt. The city, scarred by siege, became the new capital of a rising empire. He repopulated it with Muslims, Christians, and Jews. Markets reopened. Mosques rose beside churches. Trade routes revived. Constantinople, now Istanbul, became the beating heart of a new imperial world. But Mehmed's ambition stretched far beyond one city. Ottoman armies pushed deeper into the Balkans. Serbia fell. Bosnia was absorbed. Albania resisted fiercely under Skanderbeg, but the tide of Ottoman expansion did not stop. The empire was no longer a regional power. It was a continental force, and its true golden age was still ahead. In 1520, a new sultan took the throne. His name was Suleiman. History would remember him as Suleiman the Magnificent. Under Suleiman I, the Ottoman Empire reached its peak. Territorially, militarily, culturally, legally. He reformed the legal system, earning the title Kanuni, the lawgiver. He strengthened administration, standardized taxation, and oversaw one of the most efficient bureaucratic systems of the early modern world. But he was also a conqueror. In 1521, he captured Belgrade. In 1526, he crushed Hungarian forces at the Battle of Mohacs. Hungary collapsed in hours. The road to Central Europe opened. Ottoman forces even reached the gates of Vienna in 1529. Though the siege failed, Europe understood something clearly. The Ottoman Empire was now one of the most powerful states on earth. To the east, Suleiman expanded into Persia. To the south, he consolidated control over the Middle East and North Africa. The empire now stretched across 3 continents: Europe, Asia, Africa. Its navy dominated the eastern Mediterranean. Ottoman admirals like Barbarossa secured maritime supremacy, challenging even Spain and Venice. Trade flourished: silk from Asia, spices from India, gold from Africa. The empire controlled critical crossroads between worlds. Istanbul became one of the largest cities on earth. Architectural masterpieces like the Süleymaniye Mosque transformed the skyline. Art, poetry, science, and scholarship thrived. The Ottoman Empire was not merely an engine of war. It was a civilization, yet even at its height, cracks began to form. Empires built on expansion must keep expanding. When expansion slows, pressure builds. After Suleiman's death in 1566, succession became less stable. Sultans grew less directly involved in military campaigns. Power increasingly shifted to court officials and elite factions. The Janissaries, once the empire's disciplined backbone, became politically influential. Corruption seeped into administration. Military innovation in Europe accelerated. Gunpowder warfare evolved. European states modernized armies and navies at rapid pace. The Ottomans struggled to adapt at the same speed. The failed Second Siege of Vienna in 1683 marked a turning point. After that defeat, European powers pushed back. Hungary was gradually lost. Territories in the Balkans slipped away over time. Russia emerged as a growing rival. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the empire became known in Europe as the sick man of Europe. Nationalist movements surged within its borders. Greece declared independence. Serbia rebelled. Egypt grew semi-independent. Reform attempts were made. The Tanzimat reforms sought to modernize the state, reorganize the army, and stabilize finances. But reform was difficult. The empire was vast, diverse, strained by debt, caught between tradition and modernization. Then came the 20th century, World War I. The Ottoman Empire aligned with the Central Powers. The war was devastating. Fronts opened across the Middle East. Arab revolts weakened internal unity. British and Allied forces advanced. When the war ended in 1918, the empire was defeated. Occupation followed. Territories were partitioned. In 1922, the Ottoman Sultanate was officially abolished. The empire that had lasted over 600 years was gone, from a small frontier tribe in Anatolia, to rulers of 3 continents, to dissolution in the modern age. Yet like all great empires, the Ottomans left a legacy. Modern Turkey emerged from its remains under Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. The Middle East's borders were reshaped, often with lasting consequences. Architecture, cuisine, language, and culture across southeastern Europe and Western Asia still carry Ottoman influence. The story of the Ottoman Empire is not simply one of conquest. It is a story of transformation, from Ghazi warriors to imperial bureaucrats, from cannon blasts to constitutional reform, from unstoppable expansion to gradual decline. Constantinople fell in 1453, but the empire it birthed endured for centuries. Empires rise, empires shine, empires fade, but their shadows stretch across history long after their banners fall, and the Ottoman Empire changed the course of the world.